So let me ask a very, very, very important philosophical question. Super important. Why don't you hate Cinderella 2015? Now, the point of me asking isn't for you to hate the film. No, that's not the point here. I ask because the general consensus about these Disney live action adaptations is that people don't care for them very much. And if they care, their emotions related to it vary between mild annoyance to deep-seated vitriolic hatred for them. There seems to be 1 to 3, depending on who you ask, that don't really seem to get that sort of reaction out of people. And I wanted to know why. Why is it? Why do people seem to think that 95% of them are ass? What are the 5% doing? But not like the 5%, but like 1.6%, because I'm only talking about one of them. One of the 3 people seem to not mind. Remakes, adaptations all seem to have the need to explain or rationalize things that people didn't really seem to care that much about. You know, like CinemaSins and BuzzFeed articles have done great and grave harm to cinema. But the explanations that Cinderella 2015 gives, for the most part, aren't trying to explain away the things that nobody really cares about. I think what they decide to extrapolate on makes sense and work to better the core of the movie. For example, why does Cinderella tolerate the emotional turmoil her stepfamily puts her through? Why? Why is that? Well, kindness was drilled into her by her mother, especially, and her father.
Have courage and be kind.
It's considered like a key virtue, a key aspect of her personality by other people, and most importantly by her. And not only that, she wants to care for the home that her family had. It's been with them forever. It's what makes her feel at peace. That's why she just won't abandon the building itself. And the courage that she has to get through all the harm that's just thrown at her day in and day out is emboldened by the optimism that's also ingrained into her. Cinderella always thinks that things will get better. That's just a natural aspect of who she is. We see an example of this when she is first told to live into the attic and she was like, you know what, I don't have to deal with any of y'all anymore. She was wrong, initially at least, but the optimism is there. And we also see it in the new ending, or slightly new ending, but I'll get to that a little later. Another explanation is why the hell does the stepmother even treat her like ass? Why? What for? For what? 2015 decides to give you an explanation. You see when Cinderella first meets the stepmother talks about her beauty, and then her father starts to say, she gets it from her mother before he cuts himself off. The stepmother overhears the father's deep affection for Ella's mother while they're talking in the room, and also once a man, I don't know what he is the man of, but a man comes to visit to tell Ella the news of her father's passing. He mentions how Ella and her mother were all her father would talk about, and the stepmother got to hear it. Was the stepmother's treatment a way to get back at the mini-me version of a woman that she could never live up to in the eyes of someone that she loved? No, if you go based on what she says at the end of the film, that she only married Ella's father for her daughters. But before you get to the ending, which is when she says that, before you get to that point, the movie allows for that initial kind of viewing of the stepmother if you wanted to. Is it an excuse for the way that she treats Ella? No. Again, just an explanation that the movie allows for. There are like 1 or 2 explanations that I'm like, oh, okay, fine, where they try to explain why she gets the name Cinderella. She slept next to embers one night to keep warm, and then one of the stepsisters gives her the nickname like some elementary school bully. And it's also like, okay, what is up with the sisterhood of the traveling magical glass slipper? Like, how is that going to help him find Cinderella? Well, they explain the, properties of the magical glass slipper. And they also mention that this guy was just trying to pretend as if he could care at all about actually finding Ella. He did not care. He did not. spoiler, the movie for the most part isn't trying to explain away things or rationalize things that people do not care about. Like, could you imagine if if the screenwriters decided, you know what does bibbidi bobbidi boo mean? We have to explain what that means. And then like in the initial flashback or early background scenes, you just had Ella freaking out over a nightmare and her mother comes in and just sings Salakadoo, a bibbidi bobbidi boo, and it calms her down. And that's why the fairy godmother uses it. Or it was like some kind of national anthem in the native language of the country or something. And that's why Ella was destined to be queen later. I don't know. It sounds ridiculous, but sometimes these prequels and remakes want to explain away stuff and then makes it more ridiculous. I'm just saying. I'm glad the movie avoided doing stuff like that. One thing people seem to adore about Cinderella 3: A Twist in Time is that the prince has a personality. Because with the initial one, people seem to only believe that, it's kind of lacking. Other than a quick eye roll sometimes, that's all you really get from the initial version of the prince. And I think there's some of that here, even though I don't think it strays too far away from like the Prince Charming archetype. But one thing I do appreciate that a lot of other Cinderella adaptations do is the addition of them meeting initially before the dance. But what this one does in particular that I like is that the scene strengthens Cinderella and strengthens an aspect of what makes her her. The first time they meet is during the prince's hunt of a stag, and Ella manages to convince him with her empathy for the stag to get him to stop and leave the stag alone, and convinces Party to leave the stag alone. Here she comes across a bit of a paragon to me, just in a little bit of a way, not in a larger than life or a superhero aspect, which is usually the type of characters that I find that title is given to, but just in that her empathy and using her adage of courage and kindness, especially kindness towards the animal, convinces the prince to be kinder to the animal. Something about her allowed for him to, be a better person. It's like her superpower here is her kindness. And eventually he even uses what he learned from her to convince his father why they don't need to look outside the country for a princess, why they don't need outside forces to have strength as their own nation, and how they only need courage and kindness in order to see that about themselves. Like, it's not good for foreign policy, but it's cute. The additions here enhance what makes Cinderella Cinderella, and enhance what the entire core of the movie should be about, her, and what her effect is on people and animals. Okay, so speaking of animals, there's not much you can really take away from a movie that is only like 85 minutes long, but I remember watching, and I know this is the adult in me speaking because I know as a child I ate these scenes up. But man, with the original, the Tom and Jerry hijinks stuff that took up a good, I would say probably like a third of the movie. It may not be that much, but it felt like a third. It could have been reduced, and the movie did just that. They don't get rid of them completely, which I still think is also a good idea. I don't think it would have been a great idea to get rid of them all the way. They still help her a bit with her dress. They still help her a little bit with escaping the attic at the end. But Cinderella is the one that makes her original ball gown. And she makes it with her mother's own dress as the base of it. Instead of, the mice and the birds doing all of it with additions from her stepsister's items. And they no longer, solve wholly the entire climax of the film by bringing her the key. They help, like I mentioned before, but they're not solving the whole thing now. Yet again, this reduction allows for the film to focus on what the entire embodiment of the movie is, what makes Cinderella her, and how her being her is what saves her now, rather than the mice. I can't get over how they really solve the whole climax of the whole film. Her optimism, her quintessential optimism, is the thing that saves her now. When she is trapped in the attic, she thinks about, the dance with the prince, and instead of, wallowing in it, which would have been totally valid, because as I know I would have. Wallowing in it, she dances around her room like she did that night. She sings. She just appreciates the memory that she had, and she knows that it will only just continue to be a beautiful one. And the singing, her joy, her optimism at even something as dire as being locked in an attic, barred from seeing the man you love, her optimism about the fact that, hey, at least I got a good memory out of it, is what leads her to sing, and is what leads to the shoe squad down below to hear her and to investigate. The reduction allowed for Cinderella's superpower, her kindness, her optimism, her joy, to be the thing that saves her. The queen in her witchy fit, presenting the poison apple to Snow White, Hercules' shift from mortal to deity, the circle of life, Shang's bisexuality. These are moments in the Disney lexicon that I feel like they just have to get right when they do adaptations. They just gotta get it. They gotta get it down. Like, these are just moments that even if you did not devour Disney day in and day out on VHS or DVD as a child, even if you didn't do that, I still think certain scenes still kind of stick out to you. The scenes that get embedded into your mind, and Cinderella's arrival at the ball was that for me. I can remember that specific scene and the runaway, but more specifically the arrival being something that was burned into the back of my mind. And I think that the adaptation got it right. I genuinely think they got it right. Her climb up the stairs after she pushes down some nerves and reiterates her adage. The way the music swells as she descends down the stairs with all eyes on her. Just, and the dress. The dress? The amount of times I said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me with that dress, bitch? When they danced, when Ella and the prince danced, they got it. They understood. They understood. All of these adaptations are just desperate to make you feel that. Desperate to like pull on a, remember that? Remember that? Do you feel something like a figment of what you felt when you first saw that? Did you? Will you pay for that figment? Did you get it? Did you even a little bit, a whiff of it? And they got it. And don't throw tomatoes at me, okay? Like I said in the last video, I'm a very fragile person. Don't throw tomatoes at me. But I think they even just got even a bit of step above the original with that arrival scene. I adore it. They did such a good job. Such a good job. Sorry about sorry. This is all subjective. And I will say that I don't really go into these adaptations expecting them to supersede the original. Like, I don't. But it's really neat, for lack of a better word, that Cinderella 2015, at least to me, managed to have a scene that I think surpassed that. Cinderella 2015 remembered that its namesake and what makes her the character that she is had to be the foundation, the structure, the roof, the decoration. This metaphor is getting ridiculous, but that she had to be all of that for this film or it will fall apart. Now, for the others, what could possibly maybe make them lessen the indifference or the annoyance or the hatred that people seem to have for them, and not making them is not gonna happen, like at least not anytime soon. So what could be something they could do? I don't know. Because I doubt it's very helpful as a screenwriter to figure out the heart of what made the original, and make sure that every explanation, every addition, every reduction is focused on that and only enhances that, because that is vague as hell. That is very vague. That is not actionable advice for a writer at all. And then what's even more frustrating is that when it comes to these adaptations, Some of them may require more focus on the music than Cinderella 2015. Some of them may need a focus on the dynamics of 2 or 3 or 4 characters rather than just one's core belief system. Some may have 1 or 2 or 3 themes that have to be focused on. Some may be ruined completely by changing the lead up to the ending as much as this one did. It's a free-for-all. But I'm not the one getting paid by a multi-billion-dollar corporation, so I'm sure that there's someone there that can figure out which ones require what the hearts of each and every one of these are, and I hope that they do if we're gonna get them anyway, because I mean, right now, 1 or 3, depending on who you ask, 1 out of, how many are these? I refuse to look it up. How many? 15, 17, 19? It's probably not that many yet. I don't think we're quite at 19. Maybe like, I'm gonna say 12 is not right either. 1 to 3 out of like 16 or 17 or 18. That's not a good grade. Oh, and if you're wondering, you're probably not. But if you are, haven't seen any of these, especially hesitant to watch these two, thought it was pretty good, fine, quite cute, bad. Not enough to be pissed off about it, but just kind of bad. But yeah, anyway, have a beautiful day. Bye.